The death metal renaissance of the past few years is still going strong. This list of the best albums of 2023 will include not only the OGs still putting out their best work, but also the next generation of bands moving the genre forward. Welcome, metalheads. I'm the host of Heavy Metal Philosophy and writer for Metal Digest, John Barbas. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for this week's riff of the week. I know what you're thinking. John, how come you're doing a top 10 best death metal albums of 2023 when last week you only did top 5 best thrash metal albums? Well, it was just too hard. It was too hard to only pick 5. That's what kind of year we had in death metal. I couldn't narrow it down. It was hard to narrow it down to only 10. But hopefully one advantage of making this exception is it should, in theory, make it easier for me to pick my overall album of the year in the coming weeks. But let's get to the death metal, shall we? Number 10. Void Ceremony with Threads of Unknowing. Do you like fretless, virtuoso bass playing over your old school death metal? Then this is the album for you, because I haven't heard bass this impressive and technical since the last Beyond Creation album. Plus, it's all about cosmic horror, and you know I love that sort of existential terror. Number 9. Vastum, Inward to Gethsemane. I love the unique vibe on some of the songs on this album where you've got the ethereal siren female vocals in the background with the crushing brutal male vocals in the foreground. It's a very unique sound, especially in the old school death metal category. And I think that is the influence of Layla's side projects seeping their way into Vastum, and I hope that future records will have more of that. But don't worry, I don't think there's any danger of them growing as artists to the point where it stops being brutal. Number 8. Fires in the Distance, Air Not Meant for Us. This is a symphonic death doom masterpiece that I fully expect to be number 1 on a lot of people's overall album of the year list. The music part of it is so well composed and is so brilliant that they even released an instrumental version of this album that stands really well all on its own. That's how powerful the music is. And that's totally great. But also what I love is that the symphonic parts aren't gaudy and pretentious and taking up all the room in the front. The band is more than comfortable just riding on a chug by itself and sitting in that heaviness as well. Number 7. Cattle Decapitation with Parasite. Yet another example of OGs of death metal still proving, still going out there and showing that they still got it. And here's an album that perfectly balances musical growth as artists while still maintaining their edge and brutality. And they pulled off the balance that's almost impossible to get in death metal, where it's brutal but also catchy. These songs will get stuck in your head and never leave. Number 6. Entheos, Time Will Take Us All. And this is the first Entheos record where Chaney Crab does some clean singing. And a lot of times with a lot of bands, especially in extreme metal, when they start clean singing, that's when I start to think, okay, they're going to start going sophomore. You can't say that about Entheos here, because when you listen to this album, these songs will beat you down. This one's crushing, and why I picked it is because I love the blend that they've achieved here with the more modern style of guitar playing mixed with the death metal, so you get that technicality, but it still will crush your head in. Number 5, and here's where we get into the elite Dying Fetus make them beg for death. And here I have to question, what is it about death metal where these bands can be around for 30 years and not only still be relevant, but be putting out the heaviest music in the genre? Still, this album solidifies why, when you talk about death metal and you name the elite, Dying Fetus is amongst those names. There are riffs on here that when you hear them, you know right away that it's Dying Fetus without even having to look it up. And their transitions into the guitar solos, just masterful. Number 4, Cannibal Corpse, Chaos Horrific. And y'all thought I was gonna pick this one number 1, didn't you? I know. I love Cannibal Corpse. I'm biased. I fully admit it, but they're not number 1. And that just goes to show what an amazing year we had in death metal. Because y'all know I love Cannibal Corpse. And I consider them in the elite, their top 5. And we still got more coming. However, Chaos Horrific just once again, as if they had anything left to prove, once again proves why Cannibal Corpse is the standard bearer in all of death metal. And Eric Rutan adding yet another notch on the belt of his resume, showing that he's got the best, most crushing guitar tone in death metal, period. Number 3, Tomb Mold, The Enduring Spirit. Derek went off and did 2 Dream Unending albums, and when he came back to Tomb Mold, he brought with him that soaring, drenched sounding guitar tone. And now Tomb Mold is not just a fan favorite of the underground, they've become something more in the death metal genre. They've become something wholly unique. And sounding unique is what gets you on Album of the Year lists. Number 2, Frozen Soul, Glacial Domination. When this album dropped, of course, a lot of death metal fans absolutely loved it, me included, that's why it's number 2, but there was some criticism from some other death metal fans that said that this record is merely bolt thrower worship. Well, to those people, I say, good. I love Bolt Thrower. I miss Bolt Thrower. And it's not enough to simply worship at the altar of Bolt Thrower if you're not talented enough to pull it off. Frozen Soul are talented enough to pull it off. And my favorite number 1 best death metal album of 2023, horrendous, Ontological Mysterio. When I heard this album, I got a sneak preview of it, and when I heard it, I was absolutely blown away. And I just had to talk to the band about it because the music is so weird. I knew that they had to be weird in their personal lives as well, because normies don't make music like this. And I also knew right away from listening to it that these guys had to be huge fans of trad metal with all of the bombast and guitar harmonies and those traditional heavy metal moves that they pulled off. So when I got them on my podcast, I asked them all about it.
And that is why, honestly speaking, there aren't many like traditional metal revival bands that I think are that good. And I think it's because they're looking at this thing on the surface and it's like, we're going to copy what the stuff was on the surface. And that's all they're communicating is like the things that don't make sense in our current world, because they can't make sense in our current. And I think that to me is the record's great success and the band's success, which is really what we've been doing for many years now. And I just think we've managed to do it in a way that I don't want to say we perfected it yet, but I think we're working towards that. But carrying that same flame that they had and bringing it into a space that actually makes sense with where we live right now.
That movie analogy you made makes a lot of sense. So for instance, if somebody today was to try to speak like Dean Martin, It would sound
Yeah.
fake, you know. But that's who Dean Martin actually was.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to make movies like that, you couldn't speak like Dean Martin, but you would want to still have that coolness that he had if you wanted to make that kind of movie.
Yeah, and who is the modern Dean Martin? Who's the cool talker? I don't know, but.
And I wasn't disappointed with their answers. You just will not hear another record in death metal that sounds like this from any other band. And each song on the album sounds unique to the other songs, but it's still cohesive as one artistic offering, because even though each song sounds different, they still all have the same spirit. It's incredible. And we're not done yet, because not only do we have more subgenres of metal to count down the best of the year before we get to the penultimate overall album of the year episode, but we also still have the riff of the week to talk about. The riff of the week will play as the episode closes, and for this week, I'm picking Frozen Soul, Glacial Domination, because Bolt Thrower. Tell me what you think about my list of the best death metal albums of 2023. What were your favorites from the year? And if you're on YouTube, you can click right here to get my 5 favorite thrash metal albums of the year. If you're listening audio only, no worries, links in the description. But most importantly, read philosophy, listen to metal. I love you.